Welcome back to the Rasheed Report. As 2015 came to a close, I'm sure many of you are looking back on the year fondly. For American Muslims, however, we're all breathing a collective sigh of relief, saying, thank God it's over. This year marked the first year where anti-Muslim sentiment reached the same levels as right after 9/11. It seemed this year everything that could go wrong for the portrayal of Muslims in the media did. You see, every time a terrorist attack happens and the perpetrator is Muslim, the faith of Islam is unjustly prosecuted. The San Bernardino shooting was the prime example of this and brought to light this double-standard nature of the media when covering terror attacks. When a terror attack is committed by a Muslim, the faith of Islam is often put on trial, and leaders demand people of the same faith to condemn the attack. Dalia Mugahed perfectly explains this in an interview with MSNBC. However, just weeks after the attack on Planned Parenthood, the same was not asked of Christians for the pro-life beliefs of Richard Louis Deere, who then got very little to no coverage once the Bernardino shootings occurred. And while practicing Muslims may know that the actions of those few attackers conflict with the basic tenets of their faith, the rest of the world and media tend to think otherwise, and use it as another example to fuel the flames of Islamophobia and double standards. Well, that very thing happened this year twice, with the Paris attacks and then later the shootings in San Bernardino. And while these happen extremely less frequently than domestic terror attacks made by white Christian males, they are publicized and blown way out of proportion for weeks on end, often inaccurately. For example, after the San Bernardino shootings, multiple media outlets reported that the wife in the shootings, Tashfeen Malik, posted ISIS sympathizing material on Facebook, sparking uproar about how this was not flagged and how the attacks were able to proceed. However, the FBI recently released a statement saying no post remained from her account supporting ISIS at all. Yet the damage is already done. You've already incited so much fear into people across the country that now when some poor Muslim kid shares a Facebook post from the Institute for Science and International Security, he'll be reported and arrested within minutes. I mean, just think about it. A Muslim kid already went to jail for bringing a clock to school. And that was before these attacks. Can you imagine what would happen now? But Clock King here hasn't been the only one victim to Islamophobia this year. In fact, some of the biggest victims of Islamophobia haven't even been Muslims. A Sikh man was accused of being one of the Paris attackers when a Photoshop picture of him wearing a bulletproof vest and Quran circulated over the internet, and even onto the front page of a Spanish newspaper, claiming, quote, one of the terrorists may have entered Greece along with Syrian refugees, end quote. I mean, just look at the original picture. If internet trolls put that much effort and editing skill into making this guy look like a terrorist, then just imagine how much good they could do. They could make filters for Instagram, or manage to make me look like David Beckham. Even more recently, another 12-year-old Sikh boy in Texas was held in a juvenile detention center for 3 days after a bully thought it would be funny to accuse him of having a bomb. Not only was he held there for 3 days, but authorities held him without questioning, interrogation, or notifying his parents at all. First of all, just look at this kid. Just look at his face. How are you going to hold that adorable little face for 3 days? He's just an ordinary brown kid. Hell, he even looks a lot like me now that I think about it. He's got the same glasses and the same number of chins. The fact that this kid wasn't even Muslim, yet still subject to anti-Muslim hatred, speaks more volumes about the Texas educational system than anything else. If you're going to discriminate against a particular background, at least get it right. At this point, there's only one thing to say about Texas, which SpongeBob said best.
Hey Patrick, what am I now?
Stupid?
No, I'm Texas!
What's the difference?
Honestly, Texas, get your act together. Not just your educational system, but even your football team is trash. Hail to the Redskins. This is all just an unfortunate result of the continued sensationalized nature of Muslim media coverage. The San Bernardino Facebook post scandal was just one of the many publicized media stories that have since been deemed inaccurate or exaggerated. For example, many media outlets postulated that ISIS have been using the PlayStation 4 gaming platform as a means to organize and communicate. However, there's been no evidence to support this, the headlines based off of mere speculation by Belgian Deputy Prime Minister Han Hambon. His last name being Hambon is actually quite ironic, considering Hambon translated from French literally means ham, further proving that what he was saying was just a load of baloney. Yet media outlets ran with it anyway, and undoubtedly caused a massive scare for every mom who bought their kid a PS4 for Christmas. In fact, if you listen real closely, you can hear a brown kid in Texas being arrested shortly after saying "plant the bomb" into his headset in a Call of Duty search and destroy match. Now, predictably, all this sensational coverage of terrorist attacks and Muslims has created a sense of fear in the country, which many presidential candidates have capitalized on throughout the year, most notably Donald Trump. Earlier in the year, his target was immigrants. Not only him, but Cruz also actively proposing building a full-scale wall to keep them out, citing examples such as China and Israel, proving that both Trump and Cruz have ultimately the same creative thinking skills as the writers for the new Star Wars. I mean, come on, another Death Star? You guys really need to stop letting DJ Khaled into your brainstorming sessions. But once the fears of the public started shifting towards Muslims, Trump and others pounced on an opportunity for more votes via prejudice rhetoric. I could make a video specifically dedicated to Trump's year in Muslim bashing, but his most notable anti-Muslim statements from 2015 have included shutting down every mosque, halting all Muslim immigrants, and mandating personal IDs for Muslims. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if he announced the release of an autobiographical book entitled My Struggle and grew a mustache. I might as well start stitching green crescent moons on my clothes and start hiding in my attic while I still have the chance. However, Trump was not the only candidate to hop on the anti-Muslim bandwagon. Ben Carson earlier in the year compared Syrian refugees to rabid dogs. Trump and Carson also made allegations that they saw crowds of Muslims cheering after 9/11, claims that haven't had any shred of substantiated evidence to stand on. Carson, a day after he vouched for Trump, claiming he'd seen the video Trump was referencing, took back his remarks, but Trump has continued to claim it's true. Sorry, Mr. Trump, but I think you've actually been seeing into the future rather than the past, because the only time you'll see crowds of Muslims cheering is when you and Carson lose. And while it may just be about pandering and waiting for candidates, the rhetoric and constant media coverage add even more fuel to the fire and end up having disastrous consequences. Some of you might remember in August, 2 Trump supporters were found beating a homeless Latino, claiming Trump inspired them to do it. These are the kind of people that us Muslims here in America are actually afraid of. Not Trump, but the 36% of the GOP electorate that's made him one of the frontrunners for the highest office in this country. If these people did that in response to Trump's anti-immigrant comments, then you can now imagine what they might do to Muslims. Well, you don't have to, because it's not a fantasy, it's a reality. From the Muslim cab driver shot in Pittsburgh, to armed gunman protests outside an Arizona mosque, to shots fired into a Connecticut mosque, to a 6th grade girl's hijab being ripped off and attacked by 3 boys calling her ISIS. The danger of Islamophobia is real and palpable. And it's not just coming from Trump or the GOP. A majority of media outlets end up fanning the flames of Islamophobia with utterly ridiculous coverage. In one of the most ridiculous moments of 2015, MSNBC stormed the house of the San Bernardino killers in a scene that almost looks straight out of Nightcrawler. In one of the worst pieces of journalism I've ever seen in my life, MSNBC reporter Kerry Sanders rummages through the house thinking that he's Sherlock Holmes and will find something that the FBI didn't.
Here's just some mixed nuts with peanuts.
Oh yeah, great journalistic insight there, Sanders. You know, maybe that bag of mixed nuts is trying to tell you that what you're doing is, in fact, completely nuts.
Take a look at the calendar and see if anything's marked on the calendar. And I don't see anything. That's November, so let's go over here to December. Just see if anything of importance was marked on the calendar here. And nothing there. And it's just a typical sort of calendar.
Well, duh, it's a calendar. Were you expecting a big red X on the date of the crime? Did someone not tell you this is real life, not CSI?
FBI has taken anything
exactly,
that
and he's
thought.
given us
Now,
permission to come in and also to touch this stuff. So it's not as if I'm touching things that I shouldn't be touching. So
you might check to see if anything is written on the back of these pictures, any dates.
Hey, this looks like it may have been some sort of birthday party.
Let's make sure we don't.
Okay, here's the first picture we're seeing of a child.
See the children. Let's not show the child, Kerry.
And I'm sorry, Andrea, this is sort of unfolding live as we're doing it, so I'm not sure what the next picture is going to be until I pull them open. All right.
See, Kerry Sanders is the type of person who you never give your phone to and show him pictures, because you know he's just going to keep scrolling left through your entire camera roll. I can't tell if I'm watching MSNBC or the Onion's new TV network. Honestly, Sanders, get a grip. You make Don Lemon look like Walter Cronkite. However, the worst part by far is the fact that they exposed the shooter's mom's ID on national television, basically giving some whack job everything they need for a hate crime. When you combine reckless media coverage like that with fear-mongering from candidates, it's easy to see why anti-Muslim hatred was at a record high in 2015. This fear has gotten so irrational that 30% of Republicans and 19% of Democrats were in favor of bombing Agrabah, the fictional city of Aladdin. And yet, we still have people such as the Liberty University president saying stuff like this.
I've always thought if more good people had concealed carry permits, then we could end those Muslims before they walk in and kill it.
Yeah, if that doesn't scream Islamophobia, I don't know what does. Not only does he quite literally say, end those Muslims, but the fact that he implies that everyone should have a gun is not only disturbing, but dangerous. Yeah, sure, put a gun in the hands of every person in the country, where a huge chunk of the country thinks we should bomb Aladdin. What could go wrong? Well, in February 2015, we learned exactly what could go wrong. The Chapel Hill hate crime that took the lives of Muslim Americans Daya Barakat, Yusr Abu Salha, and Razan Abu Salha, all shot in the head by 46-year-old Stephen Hicks. And while many media outlets tried to whitewash the story initially by saying it was over a parking dispute, no cars were found in the spaces Hicks had fought over before. And with an actual history of anti-Muslim and violent Facebook posts, it was clear that this was a hate crime and a deadly example of Islamophobia. Father of the slain, Muhammad Abu Salha, even said that his daughter told him, quote, "Daddy, we feel he hates us for who we are and how we look," end quote. Hicks is the defining example of Islamophobia in 2015. And to suggest that more guns in America with people like him and Trump supporters is a good idea is outright stupid and shameful. But while 2015 may have been the worst year for Muslims in Islamophobia, there were bright spots as well. Bright spots where people showed that they would not give in to fear. Even right after one of the deadliest attacks on its soil in history, France announced it would continue its acceptance of Syrian refugees. A 7-year-old kid donated all the money in his piggy bank, $20, to a vandalized mosque in Texas. Yeah, a Texas kid did that. So there is hope after all. There are many things that we are leaving in 2015. Let's make Islamophobia one of them. This is Zaher Rasheed signing off of The Rasheed Report.
This Dean TV video was made possible in part by Islamic Relief, working together for a better world, and by Guidance Residential, the #1 Islamic home financer in the U.S.